Some stories are not about conquering the world, but about how high we once dared to rise. Long ago, in the ancient world of Greece, there lived a craftsman and his son, trapped upon an island from which there was no escape. They could not leave by land, nor could they cross the sea. But in the silence of waiting, an idea began to take shape. An idea of flight. Tonight, let us return to that story. A story of freedom, of height, and of the unseen line between them. This is the story of Icarus. Far from the open sea, on an island surrounded by high cliffs, there stood a kingdom of stone and silence. This was Crete, ruled by a powerful king, Minos. His palace rose above the land, its walls bright beneath the sun. Yet beneath that beauty lay something hidden. For deep within the island, there existed a place few had ever seen, and none had ever escaped. The island of Crete was surrounded on all sides by the open sea. From a distance, it appeared peaceful, bathed in sunlight, resting quietly between sky and water. Waves moved gently along its shores. The wind carried the scent of salt, and the days passed in steady rhythm. But for those who could not leave, the island felt different. The cliffs rose high above the sea, steep, unforgiving, impossible to climb. No ships came and went freely. No paths led beyond the horizon. The sea, which seemed so open and endless, became a boundary. Each morning, the light returned as it always had. The sky changed color. The wind shifted, and shadows moved slowly across the stone. And yet, nothing truly changed. Time passed, not in sudden moments, but in quiet repetition. Day in, day out, the same horizon, the same distant line, where sea met sky. For some, this was simply the nature of the world. But for others, it became something else. A question that would not fade. Among those who lived there was a man unlike the others. His name was Daedalus, a master craftsman, a builder of wonders, a mind that could shape the impossible into reality. It was he who had designed the king's greatest secret, a labyrinth so vast, so complex, that no one who entered it could ever find their way out. But knowledge, as powerful as it may be, can also become a prison. For King Minos, fearing what Daedalus knew, refused to let him leave the island. And so, the man who had built a maze, without escape, found himself trapped within one. Long before he came to this island, Daedalus was known across many lands. His name was spoken with quiet respect, a craftsman whose skill seemed almost beyond human measure. He built things others could only imagine. Structures of stone that seemed to breathe. Devices that moved with hidden purpose. Creations shaped not only by hand, but by thought itself. Kings sought his knowledge. Cities welcomed his work. For wherever he went, something new would appear. Something that had never existed before. Yet with such skill, there came a quiet danger. For those who create do not always control what their creations become. And those who serve powerful rulers are not always free to walk away. In time, the talents that had once brought him honor became the very reason he could no longer leave. And so, on this island surrounded by sea, Daedalus remained, not as a guest, but as a man whose knowledge had bound him to his fate. Within the quiet walls of the island, Daedalus was not alone. With him was his son, Icarus, a boy who had never known the world beyond the sea. He walked the same narrow paths each day, looked upon the same distant horizon, and dreamed of something more. To Icarus, the island was both home and boundary. He would stand beside the cliffs, watching birds glide effortlessly through the open sky. They moved where they wished, rose with the wind, and vanished into the distance. And in those quiet moments, a question began to form. Why not us? Daedalus watched his son carefully. He saw the curiosity in his eyes, the restless energy of youth, and the quiet longing for freedom. And perhaps he recognized something of himself in that same desire. For even the greatest minds, when confined too long, begin to search for a way beyond the walls. In many ancient myths, the desire to leave one's limits behind appears again and again. For early storytellers, the world was vast, but also filled with boundaries. Mountains could not be crossed. Seas could not be easily sailed. And the sky belonged only to the gods. To imagine flight was to imagine something beyond human reach. Yet even then, people looked upward and wondered. Life on the island did not pass in silence alone. Between the long hours of waiting, there were small moments. Simple, quiet, but meaningful. Daedalus continued his work each day. His hands shaping, adjusting, refining, always building something, even when there was nowhere to go. And beside him, Icarus watched, learning without being taught. At times, the boy would gather feathers, scattered by the wind. He would turn them in his hands, study their shape, and hold them up against the sky, as if trying to understand something just beyond reach. They spoke little. Words were not always needed. A glance, a gesture, the quiet presence of one beside the other. These were enough. And yet, beneath those quiet days, something continued to grow. Not only skill, not only patience, but a shared understanding that the world beyond the horizon was still there, waiting. For Icarus, each passing day made the sky feel closer, not as something distant, but as something that might one day be touched. In the stillness of their confinement, Daedalus began to observe the world more closely. The birds that crossed the sky, the way their wings caught the wind, the quiet rhythm of flight. And slowly, an idea returned to him, not of escape by land, nor by sea, but by air. He gathered what he could. Feathers, left behind by passing birds. Small ones, and large ones, each carefully arranged. Thread and wax bound them together, forming shapes that echoed the wings of living creatures. Day by day, piece by piece, something impossible began to take form. Beside him, Icarus watched in quiet wonder. What had once been only a dream was now something real, something he could touch. The wings grew wider, stronger, more complete. And with them, a new feeling began to rise. Not just hope, but possibility. When the wings were complete, Daedalus called his son to his side. He held the wings carefully, as though they were something fragile, something not meant to last forever. "My son," he said quietly, "we must follow a middle path. If you fly too low, the sea will weigh down your wings and pull you into its depths. If you fly too high, the sun will soften the wax, and the wings will fall apart. So do not fly too low, and do not fly too high. Stay between them." Icarus listened. He nodded, his eyes bright with anticipation, his thoughts already reaching toward the sky. For to the young, the sky does not seem like a warning, but a promise. When the wings were finally ready, they did not leave at once. For a time, they simply stood at the edge of the cliffs. The sea moved below them, unchanged, as it always had. The wind passed gently through the feathers. It was the same wind that carried the birds. The same wind that had once seemed so distant, now within reach. Daedalus looked out across the horizon. All that lay ahead was open sky. No path marked the way forward. No voice could guide them. Only the unknown. Beside him, Icarus stood very still. His gaze lifted upward, following the light across the sky. There was no fear in his eyes, only wonder. Between them, no more words were needed. The moment had already arrived. All that remained was a single step from earth into air. And then they stepped forward. For a brief moment, there was only air beneath them. Then the wings caught the wind, and slowly, they began to rise. At first, the movement was uncertain. The body adjusting, the wings responding, finding balance within the open sky. But soon, the air held them. The wind became something they could trust. Below them, the island began to fall away. The cliffs grew smaller. The sea stretched wider. And the world they had known slowly drifted into the distance. For the first time, they were no longer bound to the earth. No walls surrounded them. No paths confined them. Only sky. Beside his father, Icarus laughed softly, a sound carried away by the wind. And in that moment, there was nothing but freedom. For a time, they flew together in silence. The rhythm of the wings, the movement of the air, became something natural. But as they traveled farther, the sky began to open even more. The light grew brighter, the air warmer, and the world below, more distant than before. Icarus felt it first. A sense of lightness, of rising beyond what he had known. The higher he climbed, the more the sky seemed to welcome him. It stretched endlessly above him. Bright, warm, almost calling him forward. Below, His father's voice carried through the wind. A reminder. Steady and careful. But the sound grew softer as the distance between them widened. For in that moment, the sky no longer felt like something to cross, but something to reach. In many ancient stories, the moment of greatest beauty often comes just before a change. To rise higher, to go beyond what is known, has always been part of the human spirit. It is this desire that drives discovery, that opens new paths, that allows the impossible to become real. And yet, within that same desire, there is a quiet risk. For the line between wonder and excess is often difficult to see. And when that line fades, what begins as freedom can slowly become something else. And so, he continued to rise. Higher and higher still. The sun shone brightly above him. Its warmth, once distant, now close enough to be felt. At first, nothing seemed to change. Then, a feather drifted loose. Another followed. The wax, softened by the heat, began to give way. The wings, once strong and certain, no longer held their form. For a moment, he remained suspended between sky and sea. Then the air slipped past him, and slowly, he began to fall. Below him, the sea waited. Wide, endless, unchanged. The same sea that had always moved in quiet rhythm, long before this moment, and long after. The sky slowly grew distant. The light softened, and the sound of wind gave way to silence. Feathers continued to drift through the air, falling one by one toward the water below. Then, only the sea remained. The surface closed gently, as if nothing had happened. No mark remained in the sky. No path left behind. Only the quiet movement of waves and the endless horizon beyond. Far above the sea, Daedalus continued forward. For a moment, he did not turn back. The wind still carried him. The sky still stretched ahead. And yet, something had changed. Slowly, he looked behind him. The space where his son had been was empty. Only the open sky remained. No voice called out. No movement followed. Just distance. He circled once, above the sea. The waves moved as they always had, calm and indifferent. Somewhere below, feathers drifted upon the water. And in that quiet moment, Daedalus understood that not all creations are meant to last. And so, the story comes quietly to rest. The sea continues its endless motion. The sky remains open and wide. And the wind moves as it always has. Long after the moment has passed, the world itself carries on. But the story remains. It travels across time, across generations, carried not by wings, but by memory. The tale of Icarus is not only a story of falling, it is also a story of rising, of reaching beyond what is known, of stepping into the unknown sky, and of discovering, even for a brief moment, what it means to be free. Yet within that freedom, there is also a quiet truth, that not all heights are meant to be held. That balance between too little and too much is often where we are meant to remain. And perhaps that is why the story endures. Not as a warning alone, but as a reflection of the human desire to rise, and the quiet wisdom that asks us to know our limits. So let the story rest now. Let the sky grow quiet once more, and the sea return to its endless rhythm. Let the wings of memory fold gently into the past. And if you are listening, in the calm of your own night, may the world around you grow just a little more still. May your thoughts drift softly, like feathers upon the air, like waves returning to the sea. For now, the story is complete. The ancient sky fades into silence, and the horizon rests beneath the stars. And somewhere far beyond the light, another story waits patiently to be told. Until then, rest well.